Okay, now it's time for price elasticity of demand. The idea stays more or less the same, and if you look at the slide, you can see that the definition of price elasticity of demand is pretty analogical, right? Well, simply we replace quantity supplied with quantity demanded, but otherwise this is all the same. Again, we trace the impact of relative changes in the price on relative change in quantity demand. So if the definition itself is pretty similar, then the mathematics behind it is also pretty similar. So again, we've got relative change in terms of percentage change in fact, percentage change in quantity demanded, and percentage change in the price. We rule out 100% because it's here and there, right? And we put variables into order, so we've got all deltas together and non-delta expressions as another fraction. And again, we've got this situation here with deltas when you have discrete changes from one level to another level, and we've got the formula using derivatives. This is the approach you are going to practice during seminars, obviously. Price elasticity of demand is perceived as a very important variable. We use it in several contexts because this is a great measure for customers' sensitivity to price, right? So price elasticity of demand tells us to what extent our consumers are price sensitive. Price elasticity of demand is always negative. This is because of the fact that there are opposite direction of changes. I mean, when the market price grows, then law of demand would suggest that higher prices would mean lower quantity demanded. So the positive change in the price is accompanied by the negative change in quantity demanded. So we've got negative number divided by positive number, which is negative. And the other way around, if the change in the price is negative, so prices are falling down, then people try to buy more. So negative change in the price would be corresponding with higher quantities demanded. So positive change here, positive divided by negative, again negative, right? How to interpret the numbers? Well, this is analogical to price elasticity of supply. Imagine that you calculate your price elasticity of demand, and this is equal to minus 2.5. If this is minus 2.5, then you can look back to our definition, and you can say, all right, I know that minus 2.5 is equal to minus 2.5 divided by 1. So I could rephrase it as minus 2.5% divided by 1%. Yeah? And the interpretation now is very simple. 1% increase in the price would result in 2.5 decrease because that was minus, decrease in quantity demanded, right? So the interpretation shouldn't make much of problems too. The only thing that is worth probably mentioning about interpretation is the question which price elasticity of demand is big and which one is small. This is a bit tricky, no? A bit tricky because mathematically, when you compare two numbers like minus 2 and minus 8, then obviously -8 is smaller than -2. However, for price elasticity of demand, if the price goes up by 1% and you have two different markets and you have two different responses, negative response of -2% here and negative response of -8% here, then the response here is bigger. This -8 means more than -2. That's why, for interpretation, we quite often place price elasticity of demand in absolute value to show the absolute value of the change. Because we know if the price goes up, quantity demanded will go down. So the negative sign here is just to tell us it's gonna go down. But to what extent? Well, 2 is small, 8 is big. So this is bigger price elasticity. -8 means greater price elasticity of demand than -2. What does price elasticity of demand depend on? First of all, on the number and availability of substitutes. So we are quite price inelastic. We are not sensitive to prices if we don't have substitutes. So if you need to buy a certain medication for your illness and there are no substitutes, then you basically pay as much as it is needed and your demand is pretty inelastic. You are insensitive to the price. I mean, you don't like this high price, but it does not change your decision whether to buy your medication or not. This is widely used when, for instance, selling beer at the airport, because once you go over the security check, you cannot go back. So you are actually limited to 1, 2, or 3 places where you can buy beer, and therefore they charge you a lot for beer at the airports, right? Time for making purchase decision. The less time you have, the more insensitive to price you are. So if you don't have much time to make your decision, then your price elasticity is small. Therefore, you are not sensitive to price. This is why many sellers try to finish the sales, try to close the transaction as quickly as possible, right? They try not to give you too much time, because time can make you more sensitive to price. The next factor that we need to take into account is the share of expenditures on a given good in your total expenditures. Seems a bit complicated, but it is as simple as your attitude towards the price of table salt. I believe that you do not really know what is the price of table salt. This is because you are pretty insensitive to this price. Why is that so? Because actually the money that you spend on table salt is a very tiny, insignificant part of your total budget. Therefore, if you buy, let's say, 1 kilogram of table salt per month, which is probably quite a lot, then whether you pay $0.50, $0.25 per 1 kilogram, it doesn't really matter to you. So if the price of table salt goes up by 20%, you are pretty unlikely to ignore it, just not to notice. But if you, for instance, want to buy a new television and this television goes up by 10%, then you will certainly see it, okay? Because simply your expenditure on television is something much, much bigger than your spendings on tables. The last element that shapes sensitivity to price is effectiveness of marketing campaigns. Marketing campaigns are quite often aimed at developing some kind of brand loyalty among customers. It is needed for producers because if you are very much brand loyal, then you tend to ignore to a certain extent or even to a significant extent the problem of the price. You can see many advertisements, many commercials showing various products, and those commercials focus on many things, including the brand, but they tend to ignore the matter of price. So whenever you want to buy television that is produced by Sony because you believe Sony, generally speaking, makes good TVs, and then this is the case. You say, yeah, perhaps I paid more for this TV than for the TV produced by other manufacturer, but no, this is so. If you like using iPhone by Apple, again, this is not a very cheap mobile, but you say, yeah, but this is iPhone, right? This is something. So those are the effects of marketing campaigns. When you say, yeah, well, I don't mind the price that much. I mean, of course, I would like the price to be lower, but actually I can live with that because I'm very much interested in the product itself. So whenever you present this kind of attitude, I don't care that much about the price because I value the product itself, then we can say, well, marketing guys were pretty successful in their job and your sensitivity to prices is reduced. Hence, the price elasticity of demand that you show is relatively low. There are, as you can see in this slide, 5 types of demand. We can distinguish 5 different cases of demand. The first one being perfectly inelastic demand. Then the elasticity of this demand is simply 0, which means that demand, or to be more precise, quantity demanded, does not depend on the price at all. This is pretty theoretical thing, but usually we say there are things that we buy no matter the price is, obviously within some range, within some common sense range. But for instance, coffins, this is the case, right? We need a coffin for that person, so we've got so many casualties, for instance, and we need so many coffins no matter the price is. So this is perfectly inelastic demand. It could be about some medication that you need to take, and here again, you don't care about the price at all. If it's some kind of medication that is a life-saving one, for instance, then you would be able to buy it as long as it is just possible for you, and you will not make it dependent on the price. You need the drug to live, so you buy this drug no matter the price. On the other hand, we got this perfectly elastic demand, where well, we could draw this demand as a horizontal line. So this is the kind of demand that we can see in a perfect competition market. Then for a single business under the perfect competition market, this market demand is really perfectly elastic. So both those cases here, perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic demands, are more theoretical concepts, and it is quite difficult really to find a very good, reliable example from the real life, everyday life. Let's focus rather on elastic and inelastic demand. Inelastic demand is simply the demand of low elasticity, when we say the sensitivity of consumers towards price is pretty low. So this elasticity of demand, price elasticity of demand, would be from 0 to 1. And on the other hand, we've got elastic demand, where consumers are sensitive to price, and this price elasticity of demand is above 1. Between those two types, we've got this unit elastic case when price elasticity of demand is equal 1, just precisely equal 1, then this kind of demand wouldn't be either elastic nor inelastic. It's unit elastic. It's between those two. Why is it important? It is important because there is a relation between price elasticity of demand and consumers' expenditures and total revenue of businesses, as you can see in the slide here. So, first of all, let's consider total revenues and total expenditures of customers. We could say this is just the same money, as you can see from the equation, TR equals TE. Total revenues is the money that business gains from selling things. So they are kind of calculated by multiplying price, P, times Q, quantity. How much we sell times at what price we sell. This is total revenue. It is pretty obvious when you think carefully that total revenues are just equal to total expenditures of customers. If customers spend money on some goods, well, the money they spend is equal to the price they have to pay times the quantity they want to buy. So revenues and expenditures is actually the same money, just perceived from two different perspectives. This is money flowing from consumers, for whom these are expenditures, to businesses for whom these are revenues. Those revenues or those expenditures are price times quantity. But obviously there is a link between the price and the quantity. I mean, if the price goes up, then we know it from the law of demand, the quantity that people buy would decrease. If the price goes down, then the quantity of goods that people want to buy would go up. The question here is, if we change the price, increase it or decrease it, what kind of impact would it have on total revenues? And here, the idea of price elasticity of demand is very useful. If demand is inelastic, that means consumers are not very sensitive towards price. Then, if you increase the price, the impact on consumers, the impact on quantity demanded is pretty small. Therefore, if you increase the price, quantity demanded will decrease, but just slightly. Therefore, the increase in the price will increase your total revenue. So you will be able to collect more money from the market. If you lower the prices with inelastic demand, then you will increase quantity demanded, but just a little bit. Therefore, if you decrease the prices, then you would also decrease total revenues. To sum up, if your demand for your products is inelastic, the direction of the change in the price will be the same as the direction in the change of your revenues. If you increase the prices, you increase your revenues. If you decrease your prices, you decrease your revenues. It's the other way around if your demand is elastic. If your demand is elastic, then your customers are price sensitive. So their reaction to changes in your price is quite violent, quite dramatic. If this is the case, then if you increase the price, even a little bit, many people would give up buying your goods. So if you increase the price, the quantity demanded will go sharply down, which means that your total revenue will also decrease. So if the price goes up, your total revenues would go down. If you decrease the prices, then quantity demanded will grow radically, therefore total revenues would also grow. If you decrease the price, total revenues would go up. This is the case of elastic demand. So as you can see, if you want to increase your total revenue, then you should know whether your demand is elastic or inelastic, because it tells you what to do, whether to increase prices or decrease prices if you want to increase your total revenue. Knowing the sensitivity to price of your customers may be a very useful thing for any manager running a business.